Jessica Pegula recently issued a powerful public condemnation of the Women's Tennis Association for their profound mishandling of Alexandra Eala. The staggering statistics supporting her bold claim are simply impossible to ignore. This unfolding situation goes far beyond mere sports commentary or the everyday complaints of frustrated fans. The powerful statements Pegula delivered in Dubai during February of 2026 painted an entirely different picture. Her words formed a meticulously structured and data-driven indictment against a governing body. This elite organization passively watched as a 20-year-old tennis sensation from the Philippines took the sporting world by storm. This remarkable young athlete managed to draw 68,687 passionate fans into a single stadium. That massive crowd established a brand new attendance record for any Monday session in the history of the Australian Open.
I think it was Eala is the match that I was looking at, and there was people like wrapped around the stadium just trying to get in, which is pretty crazy. And I mean, it's cool to see and it's exciting, but obviously, you know, for fan experience, I don't know because I'm not living that same experience, but hopefully the event kind of continues.
This intense feeling of institutional disrespect has permeated the sport for over 2 years, and its true origins have nothing to do with Alexandra Eala. The actual catalyst for this movement occurred back in November of 2023. The ultimate breaking point took place in Cancun, Mexico, during the highly anticipated Women's Tennis Association Finals. Aryna Sabalenka, the reigning world #1, stood directly in front of the press cameras and broadcast her profound frustrations to the entire globe. She explicitly declared that she felt deeply disrespected by the leadership of the Women's Tennis Association. Her bold grievance was not born from petty locker room drama, but rather from a fundamental and dangerous failure in tournament management. The official court surfaces for the crucial season-ending championship were hastily finalized a mere 24 hours before the matches actually began. To be absolutely clear, the elite players were given only 24 hours of notice, not 24 days. This shocking administrative delay occurred right before the single most important event on the entire Women's Tennis Association calendar. Sabalenka's severe complaints were entirely valid, as they were deeply rooted in objective reality rather than mere hurt feelings. Her vocal protest was fundamentally about ensuring the physical safety and professional dignity of the world's most elite athletes. That specific moment in Mexico planted a powerful seed of rebellion in the locker room, which fully blossomed by the year 2026. The movement quickly grew into a formidable force that the Women's Tennis Association simply could no longer contain or safely ignore. The entire landscape of the sport truly began to shift and fracture when March of 2025 finally arrived. A 19-year-old wild-card entry from the Philippines proudly marched into the prestigious and highly competitive Miami Open. Although she was ranked well outside the top 100 players globally, she immediately began dominating the professional courts. She fearlessly started dismantling the deeply established and highly protected hierarchy of the Women's Tennis Association. Alexandra Eala did not quietly ease her way into the spotlight, but instead aggressively defeated the world #2 player, Iga Swiatek. She secured a stunning and definitive victory in the quarterfinals with a hard-fought score of 6-2 and 7-5. This incredible tournament result instantly sent the entire Filipino community in Miami into an absolute state of collective euphoria and joyful disbelief. Following that monumental and historic upset, the young star confidently walked onto the court to face the formidable Jessica Pegula herself. The massive crowd of passionate fans was already gathering and creating an electric, unforgettable atmosphere for the impending battle.
Fans that we're getting and making that still an enjoyable experience for them. But I did see some of the courts have like lines getting in and it seems really busy, and I saw some reports that it's some of their busiest.
The entire tennis venue appeared exceptionally busy, and multiple official reports quickly confirmed that it was one of their most crowded events in history. The ensuing legendary semifinal battle between Eala and Pegula lasted for an exhausting 2 hours and 25 minutes. This grueling and highly physical match pushed both players to their absolute limits and finally concluded well past midnight. Pegula, who was ranked world number 4 at the time, barely managed to secure the victory in a tightly contested 3-set thriller with scores of 7-6, 3-6, and 7-6. However, the shocking events that transpired immediately after the final point was played are what this incredible story is truly about. A completely drained and breathless Pegula slowly walked directly up to the main television camera, positioned right beside the court. She deliberately grabbed a marker and wrote the heavy words "I am tired" directly onto the expensive camera lens. This action was not a momentary gesture of anger, but rather a profound expression of physical exhaustion and a public protest against a failing institution. She was fiercely protesting an organization that consistently forced its highest-profile athletes to compete deep into the early hours of the morning. These very same exhausted athletes were then cruelly expected to fully recover and prepare for a championship final the very next day. The punishing scheduling demands placed an absolutely impossible physical burden on the elite players who reached the deepest stages of the tournament. Meanwhile, thousands of devoted Filipino fans remained firmly seated in the massive stadium until the absolute final point was officially played. This incredibly loyal and vocal group of supporters flatly refused to leave the venue until their beloved hometown hero finally exited the court. That specific crowd, completely fueled by unwavering devotion and electric energy, served as the first undeniable sign of a massive cultural shift approaching the sport. Pegula certainly took notice of this phenomenon, and during her post-match press conference, she offered the highest possible praise for her young opponent. She described Eala as a phenomenally talented tennis player who consistently takes the ball early and competes with a fierce, unrelenting determination. She emphasized that the young Filipina sensation handles the immense pressure of elite competition exceptionally well. This public praise carries immense institutional weight, especially considering that Pegula's own family literally owns major professional sports franchises like the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. Given her deep background and lifelong immersion in professional sports ownership, Pegula inherently knows exactly what a true franchise athletic player looks like. She quickly realized she had just competed against a generational talent whose subsequent rise would completely and permanently transform the entire sport of tennis. She possesses a keen eye for identifying a true franchise player, and she knew with absolute certainty that she had just battled against one. The incredible sequence of events that unfolded next fundamentally changed the sport. That historic encounter completely rewrote the financial calculus and strategic future of the entire Women's Tennis Association Tour. By the end of the year 2025, Alexandra Eala had gloriously captured her very first major title. She achieved this incredible milestone at the Guadalajara 125 Open in Mexico, spectacularly defeating Hungary's own Panna Udvardy in a thrilling 3-set comeback. She rallied brilliantly to win with scores of 1-6, 7-5, and 6-3, immediately after suffering a brutal loss in the opening set. Furthermore, her official tournament prize money skyrocketed dramatically from $289,628. By the end of 2025, her total earnings surged to roughly $907,777. That massive financial leap translates to well over 53 million Philippine pesos, representing a staggering 213.4% increase. This astronomical surge in earnings occurred over the incredibly short span of just a single calendar year. Eala officially ranked 74th on the global prize money list, yet her massive digital footprint was already punching significantly above that modest ranking. Her online presence and sheer marketability vastly outperformed her numerical ranking on the professional tour. Renowned tennis journalist Ben Rothenberg meticulously documented how her standard press conference clips and daily match highlights were performing online. Those simple YouTube videos were routinely pulling in well over 30,000 views within mere hours of being posted on the platform. For proper context, those astonishing digital engagement metrics were entirely unprecedented for a rising rookie. She was consistently surpassing the online engagement metrics of legendary figures like Novak Djokovic and superstar Carlos Alcaraz. Those two men represent the absolute most marketable and globally recognized names in the entire sport of tennis. A relatively unknown player who started the calendar year completely outside the top 100 was now drastically outperforming the biggest stars in digital reach. This young athlete was single-handedly rewriting the rules of modern sports popularity. The Women's Tennis Association suddenly had an absolute global phenomenon on its hands, and the organization was completely unprepared to manage it. Everything culminated on January 19th. 2026, at the iconic Melbourne Park. The highly anticipated first Monday session of the Australian Open proudly registered exactly 68,687 passionate fans. That astonishing attendance figure instantly became the absolute highest single-day crowd in the massive tournament's entire history. A massive wave of enthusiastic supporters from the Victorian Filipino migrant community, officially estimated at nearly 100,000 people, had fully mobilized. They had all converged directly on the city of Melbourne, specifically to watch Alexandra Eala play her very first round match in the main draw of a Grand Slam. This was a monumental moment of immense national pride for her loyal followers. Despite this highly predictable surge in attendance, the organizing committee inexplicably scheduled that historic match on the tiny and heavily restricted court number 6. They foolishly bypassed the massive Rod Laver Arena and the spacious Margaret Court Arena in favor of a secondary court. Frustrated fans queued tirelessly for well over 90 long minutes, forming massive lines that stretched all the way back to the main stadium. Tragically, thousands of these dedicated supporters were simply turned away at the gates without seeing a single volley. The security officials had to firmly reject them because court number 6 had completely hit its maximum safety capacity hours before the young star even stepped onto the playing surface. Consequently, thousands of heartbroken supporters ended up clustering together outside to watch the match broadcast on giant outdoor television screens. When the intensely fought match finally concluded with Eala losing to the formidable American athlete Alicia Parks, absolute chaos erupted. The young Filipina superstar literally had to be physically escorted out of the venue by a heavily armed detail of 12 security guards just to safely exit the premises. The extreme security measure was entirely necessary, as thousands of screaming fans aggressively surged toward her in adoration. Eala humbly described the entire chaotic experience as profoundly overwhelming, openly admitting that she never expected such massive crowds to materialize. She noted that such intense fandom was unusual even for her casual practice sessions, let alone her actual competitive matches.
Things like that happen. I mean, you could argue that it was, maybe a poor schedule and maybe they could schedule him on a bigger court. Yes, but again, she's so young and she's just coming through. I saw the other day with Alex Eala, that's been a talk, and which is understandable. There's some players coming from respective countries, like she's coming from Philippines, which is now a big deal. She's been the biggest ever, tennis player from that country, which is a big country, and there's a big interest.
Given the huge population of her homeland, there is an undeniably massive and highly lucrative public interest in tracking her ongoing athletic journey. In the direct aftermath of the scheduling disaster, the Australian Open organizers scrambled desperately to control the public narrative. They eventually posted a carefully worded corporate response on social media, weakly claiming they would take the massive operational blunder as a learning experience for the 2027 event. However, there is a much deeper and more cynical reality to uncover here. The truly contrarian and most important read of the entire situation is that by openly acknowledging the massive problem, the organizers inherently proved they possessed the relevant demographic data all along. They knew with absolute certainty that the local Victorian Filipino community numbered around 100,000 eager and willing ticket buyers. They were also fully aware that her explosive YouTube reach was consistently beating legendary, established champions like Djokovic. The internal attendance projections and sophisticated data models undeniably existed well before the tournament ever began. Placing her on court number 6 was absolutely not a harmless mistake born from innocent ignorance, but rather a devastating and deliberate failure of institutional will. Then Dubai happened, and the deeply flawed institutional system completely and spectacularly broke down on a global stage. The 2026 Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships rapidly descended into the absolute most chaotic Women's Tennis Association event in recent memory. Within the incredibly turbulent opening days of the tournament, an astonishing 10 elite players abruptly withdrew or retired from professional competition. This staggering mass exodus included world number 1, Aryna Sabalenka, and world number 2, Iga Swiatek, who both explicitly cited extreme workload and severe physical fatigue. Paula Badosa tragically retired from her scheduled match due to a severe leg injury, painfully marking the 38th walkover of her professional career. Almost immediately, toxic social media trolls viciously accused the injured athlete of blatantly disrespecting the sacred game of professional tennis. Badosa fiercely fired back at her cruel critics, vividly describing the absolute nightmare of competing through chronic physical agony across a grueling 11-month season. Adding to the absolute carnage, Elena Rybakina was forced to retire entirely due to sudden illness, while Barbora Krejcikova also quietly withdrew from the deteriorating bracket. The elite professional tour was literally collapsing under its own massive, unsustainable weight, while the top half of the draw completely disintegrated in real time. Yet, amidst this unprecedented wave of high-profile dropouts, the young Alexandra Eala was miraculously and consistently winning her challenging matches. On February 17, 2026, the fearless rookie confidently walked onto the hard court at the Aviation Club Tennis Center. She brilliantly dismantled the formidable world number 8, Jasmine Paolini, securing a stunning victory with dominant scores of 6-1 and 7-6. Riding that incredible wave of momentum, she then systematically defeated world number 32 Sorana Cirstea to proudly advance directly into the prestigious quarterfinals. Both of these monumental matches were played in front of absolutely packed, roaring houses, heavily populated by the passionate local Filipino expatriate community. These devoted fans completely filled the massive stadium, creating what Eala humbly described as a true blessing and an absolutely amazing electric atmosphere. While the most heavily promoted top seeds of the organization were constantly withdrawing, a 20-year-old from the Philippines heroically kept the entire tournament alive. Now, here is the absolute biggest, most crucial reveal in this entire unfolding saga, and it connects directly back to that iconic Miami exhaustion incident. On February 17, 2026, the exact same day Eala stunningly defeated Paolini, the highest leadership made a massive structural announcement. The official chair of the Women's Tennis Association, Valerie Camillo, formally announced the immediate creation of the powerful Tour Architecture Council. This newly established formal governing body was specifically and aggressively tasked with completely redesigning the entire calendar structure ahead of the 2027 season. In a brilliant and poetic twist of fate, the Supreme Chair officially appointed to lead that exact Reform Council was none other than Jessica Pegula. That single massive revelation fundamentally changes absolutely everything about how the mainstream media narrative surrounding her public frustrations should actually be interpreted. Pegula did not simply have an emotional meltdown in the desperate, reactionary way that initial media framing unfairly implied to the general public. She was never just being blindly emotional, but rather executing a highly calculated, strategic transition from a frustrated frontline player directly into institutional power. The very same exhausted woman who famously wrote, "I am tired" on a broadcast camera lens in Miami is now actively wielding immense executive authority over the sport. She currently stands as the ultimate corporate authority, chairing the specific body that strictly dictates exactly what the entire professional schedule looks like moving forward. Pegula's highly influential council now proudly includes elite heavyweights like Victoria Azarenka, Maria Sakkari, Katie Volinets, and the official chair herself, Valerie Camillo. It also features high-level tournament executives Laura Ceccarelli and Alistair Garland, alongside brilliant operational specialists like Ashley Keeber and Joan Pannell. This powerful movement is absolutely not a simple locker room protest, but rather a massive, highly coordinated corporate restructuring of the athletic landscape. During her highly publicized press conferences in Dubai, Pegula explicitly pointed to the crazy scenes of thousands of eager fans wrapped entirely around the stadium for Eala's matches. She brilliantly used that overwhelming physical evidence to prove that the global event was rapidly growing, but in a chaotic way the current infrastructure simply cannot support. Her deep family background in billion-dollar professional sports ownership provides her with a highly sophisticated corporate language that most player advocates simply lack. She fundamentally and instinctively understands massive revenue flows, complex stakeholder resistance, and intricate franchise valuation on a deeply molecular level. Therefore, when Pegula firmly states that the current professional calendar does not feel sustainable, she is issuing a highly sophisticated, data-backed governance assessment. There is one final, incredibly poignant detail in this remarkable story that the mainstream sports coverage has not yet fully absorbed or properly appreciated. After Coco Gauff ultimately defeated Eala with decisive scores of 6-0 and 6-2, Gauff gracefully used her press conference to sincerely thank the passionate Filipino fans. If brilliant young stars like Gauff and Amanda Anisimova can completely adapt to the undeniable Eala effect and utilize her crowd energy, the ultimate question remains whether the governing institution will finally harness this massive phenomenon or, once again, banish their most talked-about player to the equivalent of court number 6 in 2027,